One of my favorite stories that I tell my students every year is how intense the relationship between my father and baseball and I was. And I apologize to my students at the beginning of the semester because I tell them that the person that they're going to experience was largely formed on the baseball fields growing up. So I tell them this story, which my father doesn't love me telling, and uses it actually in his life as he talks to other people about maybe what he shouldn't have done. So when I was 7 or 8 years old, I was playing t-ball. I think it was t-ball. It may have been first year coach pitch. That's actually irrelevant to the story. And somehow on the playground at school, a young girl and I had been wrestling, and she flipped me over and slightly fractured my wrist. It was slight. It wasn't big, but it was slight. Enough that they put a cast on. It's actually this arm. Put a cast on my arm. And when we went into the doctor's office, they were going to put the cast on, and my dad asked the doctor to put the cast below my elbow, and if we could, above my wrist, so that I could continue to play baseball, t-ball, coach pitch, whatever it was. This was a league where they had just started keeping track of scores. I remember this because we were playing in the tournament, whatever the tournament was. Our team was getting ready to go play at like the end of the season thing, and my father didn't want me to miss any of the games. And in fairness, I didn't want to miss any of the games either because I love to play. And so I was out at shortstop as a 7 or 8 year old with a cast on my arm that was below the elbow and above the wrist so that I could play in the tournament in Loveland against other little kids in a game that may or may not have had a score to it. And so I tell this story today to my students, and there's always an audible gasp when I tell them that, and they sort of shake their heads, and if they've met me and they know that I'm going to be a tough pain in the ass son of a bitch, and I tell them, like, this is where it came from. Like, a broken arm wasn't enough to keep me out of a game. It didn't matter. So now that we're in college, I'm teaching you when it does matter, there's not really going to be a good excuse that you get that I can sort of look back in my life and be like, well, that makes sense. And I guess it seems horrifying, that particular story, to some parents and to some people, that a father would go to the doctor and say, make sure that my son can play t-ball, even though he has a broken arm. But I never have looked at it that way. Like, that was like the lessons that the game taught me and the lessons that my father were trying to teach me, however you want to characterize those, was that you get up in the morning and you do your job and you play and you work and you do the things that you can do. And that there will always be excuses for why you can and can't do something. But at the end of the day, you can ask the doctor, can you do this and this? And if you do that, will that hurt? And if the doctor says no, you can keep going and keep doing it, whatever. And that's always one of the things that stuck with me throughout my life, actually. And one of the lessons that I don't know if my father could have taught me in another way. I mean, there are lots of ways into the circle. But for us, sports was a way to communicate not just winning and losing, but values and ways that you approach life. And I have stories like that have repeated through various coaches, Greg Poplin and John Lucy and Tim Parton and Dave Evans. I can look back on my life and look at the people that have coached me and the men that taught me what it means to persevere and what it means to overcome adversity. And those lessons were taught out on the field in a way that I don't know would have made sense in other ways. And certainly it may have been nice to have not had to play with a broken arm, but I never look back on that moment. I remember some of the games, and you at 44, you remember so very few things about being 7, 8, or 9. I remember playing. I remember the sense of pride that I had, that I could hear people murmuring about that. And sort of looking back, I realized they may have been murmuring like, why is that young kid playing with a broken arm? But to me, this was a thing that other people didn't do, or other people couldn't do. Or other people didn't think about doing. And it was a thing that I did. And it was a possibility that I realized I could do. And so as I've been getting messages from people, as I've been putting together the book, as I've been thinking about my relationship with my father and the things that sports have brought to me and the things that he taught me and the things that I now try to impart on students in my classroom and students that I advise, they all come back to this idea. And I cannot tell you how often I tell the story of playing with a broken arm. And so it's one of the inspirations for Catch. It's one of the inspirations for why I wanted to write the book. And it's been one of the great things and why I want you, if you're interested in telling me your story, or if you know somebody who fell in love with the game of baseball and who either passed that on or took that and developed their relationship with their families or their friends around town. I want to hear those stories because so much of what we do and people that love the game are bonded by the things that happened on the field. And I'm just so fascinated by those. And I hope that you will share your story with me, or if you know somebody, pass those people along to me so that I can get in touch with them. Otherwise, I will see you at our next video.